Frank Herbert imagined a creature 400 meters long, bigger than the tallest building in his lifetime, bigger than any animal that ever existed. The biology of Earth says a creature that size is impossible. It breaks 7 different laws of life, except one real organism on Earth right now is even bigger. We just don't think of it as alive. This is how Dune's sandworms expose the limits of biology and reveal the one organism that already broke them. When Denis Villeneuve started building Dune in 2018, he made a decision that would change visual effects history. He didn't want his sandworms to feel like CGI. He wanted them to feel like animals. So his team studied real biology. They photographed sandfish lizards in the Namib Desert. They modeled the mouth of the sandworm on the inside of a baleen whale's filter system. They animated the muscle contractions based on real earthworm peristalsis, the wave-like movement that lets worms travel underground. The result was a creature that felt impossibly alive. Audiences in 2024 watched a sandworm emerge from sand and forgot for a moment that it shouldn't exist. But the question every biology student asks the second the credits roll, could a creature this big actually live on any planet, in any atmosphere, anywhere in the universe? The answer is no. And the reasons are stranger than you think. Start with the simplest law in biology, the square cube law. When an animal doubles in size, its surface area grows by a factor of 4, but its volume grows by a factor of 8. Volume is what needs feeding. Surface area is what does the feeding. Double an animal's length, and the math turns against it. Frank Herbert wrote sandworms at 400 meters long. That's roughly 1,000 times the length of an earthworm. Apply the square cube law. That's 1 billion times the volume. The sandworm wouldn't be a giant worm. It would be a self-collapsing meatball that couldn't move under its own weight. Earthworms work because they're small. A worm 3 centimeters long has enough body fluid pressure to hold its shape and crawl through soil. At 400 meters, that body fluid pressure would tear the creature apart. The skin couldn't contain it. The muscles couldn't contract against it. Every cell at the bottom of the creature would be crushed by the weight of every cell above it. No bone, no chitin, no biological material we know of could support that. Even the strongest natural material, spider silk, would shatter under the strain, which is why every giant creature in nature has had to solve this problem somehow. Whales live in water that supports their weight. Dinosaurs evolved hollow bones and air sacs. Insects max out at around 40 centimeters because their exoskeletons can't scale further. Sandworms, terrestrial, soft-bodied, 400 meters long, solve this problem 0 times. But size isn't even the hardest problem. The real killer is breathing. Every animal needs to deliver oxygen to every cell in its body. Small animals can do this through their skin. Earthworms have no lungs. They just absorb oxygen directly through wet skin. Multiply that animal by 1,000, and the math falls apart again. Their inner cells are now so far from the surface that oxygen can't reach them by diffusion alone. They suffocate from the inside. Big animals solve this by inventing lungs, or gills, or hemoglobin to ferry oxygen around in blood. All of these take billions of years to evolve. Sandworms have no visible lungs in the films, no gills. They live in a desert where Arrakis's atmosphere isn't even confirmed to have enough oxygen for humans. They're operating without any oxygen delivery system we can identify, at a size that demands the most efficient one ever evolved. Then there's the speed. In Dune 2, a sandworm closes a distance of several kilometers in minutes. Estimated speed, 60 kilometers per hour, underground, through compacted sand. The energy required to move 400 meters of muscle through resistant sand at that speed is staggering. Calculations suggest it would consume more calories per minute than a blue whale consumes in a day. Where's that energy coming from? Sandworms in the books eat sand. They're filter feeders. But sand has no calories. It's silicon dioxide, inert. The Bene Gesserit explanation is that sandworms metabolize the small organisms living between sand grains. Even granting that, the calorie math doesn't work. The desert of Arrakis would have to be the most productive ecosystem in the known universe to feed even one sandworm, and there are millions of them. Everything we've said so far suggests sandworms are biological nonsense. A creature that big simply cannot live on a planet like Earth, or Arrakis, or any other. Except, there's one organism alive right now that's bigger than any sandworm Herbert ever imagined. It's not an animal, it's not a plant, and it's an organ. The largest living organism on Earth is a fungus. It's called Armillaria ostoyae, the honey fungus. It lives underground in eastern Oregon, in the Malheur National Forest. From above, you'd never know it was there. You'd just see ordinary mushrooms scattered through pine trees. But every one of those mushrooms is the fruit of the same organism. The body of the fungus, the mycelium, spreads through the soil as a vast underground network of microscopic threads, genetically identical, connected, alive. How big is it? 9.6 square kilometers, about 2,400 acres, or, to put it in Dune terms, long enough to fit 20 Dune sandworms end to end. It weighs an estimated 35,000 tons. That's heavier than 170 blue whales, and it's at least 2,400 years old. The biggest organism that ever lived isn't an animal. It's a thing we walk over every day and never think about. It eats trees from the inside out, and when we finally found it, in 1998, scientists thought their equipment was broken. Here's what's strange about Dune. Frank Herbert published Dune in 1965. The humongous fungus wasn't discovered until 1998. He was writing 50 years before science even confirmed an organism that big could exist on Earth. But read his books carefully and the parallel is uncanny. Sandworms are described as filter feeders that span underground for kilometers. They're connected to each other through chemical signals. They live thousands of years. They're geographically distributed across an entire planet. Replace sand with soil and worm with mycelium. And Frank Herbert's sandworm is almost exactly a giant fungus. This raises the question that every good science fiction asks without meaning to. When we say a creature is impossible, are we just asking the wrong question? Sandworms can't exist as animals. The square cube law won't allow it. The oxygen problem won't allow it. The energy budget won't allow it. But as fungi, as something alive but distributed, as a network of cells that spans kilometers without being any single thing in particular, suddenly the math works. The biggest organism on Earth doesn't have lungs, because it doesn't need them. Every cell is close to the surface. It doesn't have a skeleton because it doesn't need one. It doesn't move quickly because it doesn't need to. Dune sandworms aren't wrong about size. They're wrong about category. Herbert imagined a giant animal when the universe had already figured out how to be bigger by being something else, which means somewhere out there, in the oceans of an icy moon, or beneath the dust of an alien desert, life might be doing exactly what Herbert imagined, not as a single body, as a network. When we look for life on other planets, we still look for animals, for movement, for breath, for things that look like us. But the biggest, longest-lived, most successful organisms on Earth don't look anything like us. They look like fungi. They look like coral. They look like the slime molds that solve mazes without brains. They look, if you squint, exactly like sandworms. Frank Herbert wrote about a creature he thought was impossible. He was right that no animal that big could exist on any real planet. He was just looking at the wrong kingdom of life. Because the universe doesn't care what you call alive. It cares what survives. And sometimes what survives is too big to see, too slow to notice, and so distributed that it doesn't fit into our definitions at all. Dune sandworms are biologically impossible. But the next time you walk through a forest, Remember that the ground under your feet might be a single organism older than your civilization. And remember that science fiction has a habit of being right about things, just not in the way the author intended. Next week, the one VFX trick in Apollo 13 that fooled NASA's own astronauts. And the week after, 2001, A Space Odyssey got right about a moon we still haven't landed on. If you want more breakdowns where cinema and science collide, subscribe. Drop the next movie you want decoded in the comments. I read everyone.